What a fucking bizarro world we live in. You look at all the stupid shit that is told to us and all the stupid shit that we're asked to do in our lifetime. It makes you wonder, who the fuck thinks of this shit? Welcome back to the Brewed for Life podcast. If you have not yet, jump on Instagram, like, follow, check out all the stuff that's posted on there for the Brewed for Life podcast, Baines Brewing, the Dad Son community. And there's also been some stuff going up on TikTok. So please check that stuff out. Like, follow, just get in there and check it out for sure. This life that we live in is so fucking bizarre. Today, I was on the phone with one of my customers and we were talking about one specific stupid thing that we're asked to do. And that was, you're not allowed to get a plastic bag or whatever at the grocery store anymore to take your groceries out. They charge you for the paper bag. But meanwhile, you go into the aisles and there's still stuff packed in plastic bags. When you go to produce, you get a plastic bag to put your produce in. What was the logic behind telling us that we can't have plastic bags anymore? I think initially it was put out there as like a save the planet thing, but if we're really trying to save the planet with this, then why do we continue to use it in every aspect? You just can't have that bag when you check out. It just doesn't make any sense. There's no logic behind it. Just like every other week or few times a year or whatever the constant rotation was. This is cancer causing. This item is cancer causing. You shouldn't eat this. You shouldn't eat that. This is good for you. This is bad for you. And then the following cycle, all of those things they had previously said would now be okay to eat. And it's not those, it's this. What kind of a fucking world do we live in where we can't even get good information, good, consistent information out to a consumer, to the public, to whoever, as to what is right and what is wrong, and what's okay and what's not okay, and can we use plastic bags or can't we use plastic bags, and what can we use those plastic bags for? But you can't tell us that we can't use them at the at checkout of any grocery store or any convenience market or whatever, and in the same space give us plastic bags and put our produce and whatever else in. It just doesn't add up. Why is it that these things happen? And why do we comply so easily as a society to whatever this stuff is? Sometimes I think it's just completely monetary driven, right? So they want to save us from all the nonsense of plastic bags. So now they're going to say that there's only paper, but we moved away from paper bags because we were trying to save the trees. But now it's okay to go back to paper bags as long as we buy the paper bag. How does that make any sense? It goes along with what I just said with the back and forth, like this is okay this week, and then later on down the road, it's not going to be okay, but don't worry, it's going to come back and we're going to say it's okay again later. Who makes this stuff up? Like, do they literally have a fishbowl with shit and a whole bunch of little tickets and somebody turtles it around like a fucking wheel in bingo and what they come up with is going to be what the new trend is and what the new thing is that you can and can't do? Is it just a bunch of old ladies literally sitting in a bingo room, turning the dial, going, hey, at this moment, we're not going to eat broccoli because broccoli's bad for you because it causes cancer. And then we're going to stick that back in the rotational wheel. And in another 6 months, we're going to spin it and we're going to say, actually, it wasn't broccoli. It's now green squash. Who the fuck decides this shit? Really, why do we comply so easily to whatever's being said? It really makes no logical sense. If you think about it right now, too, right? So we've talked a lot about alcohol and the effects that it can have on somebody's life or whatever, right? So you can legally go to the store and buy alcohol, and you can now legally go to the store and buy weed, but it's not the same chart. They don't have a way to test really if you're under the influence of weed while you're driving. Makes no sense. If there's a standard and there's a structure for one, then there needs to be a standard and structure for the other one. How do you prove that somebody's high if you don't have a test, a way to deal with it? Which also leads to the fact that marijuana is legal in states, but it's still federally against the law. Why can't we just get all on the same page? Why can't we just put out good information that is actual and factual and just let it be what it's going to be? Why do we have to live in a world where there's so many smoke and mirrors, and we're just deflecting answers, and we're dodging questions. And why do we have to live in a world like that? Why can't we just be forthright about whatever the hell it is? And I think people would probably respect the fact that it is what it is, because what we're getting is actual truth, as opposed to, like, the constant changing of where we're going to stand. It's so, it's so fucking bizarre that we just adapt and adjust so quickly and don't ask enough questions as the why. Recent thing that we can think of, that I can think of at least, is back in the COVID era, where you had to be, what you had to be vaccinated is what they wanted everybody to be vaccinated. You had to wear a mask in public. There was supposed to be 6 feet of distancing. But it's funny because when I worked in retail, there was all of that 6 feet of distancing, but somebody didn't have any gripe whatsoever of leaning over the back of you or being shoulder to shoulder with you as long as you had a mask on to get their package of chicken or ground beef or whatever. That was okay. But when you stand in line, you needed to be 6 feet away from somebody. It just didn't make any sense. The rules and the regulations made no sense. They just like, it's just like somebody puts them together, threw up on a plate and handed it to you and said, "This is this." And when you start asking questions, don't do that. Don't ask questions. Just believe whatever it is that you're told. Now, I'm not saying that for anybody that gets politically charged and stands on one space or another. I'm not doing that to upset anybody on one side or the other. But the fact of the matter is that we all should be questioning that. Why do we always just comply with stuff? I'm not saying we need to rebel, that we need to, have an uprising or a protest or any of that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that. What I do think we need to do is question it. We have people in office. We vote senators and state representatives at the federal level. We have the same thing for our towns and cities within our state governments. Why aren't we asking more questions? The people that we elected to put in these office are the people that were elected by us, so we should have a right to ask. We pay taxes. Taxes pay these people's salaries. So essentially, they work for the people of their state, people of this country. Why aren't we asking enough questions? Why are they not following or allowing us to be able to ask these questions and get legitimate answers for it? When you take a step back and you look at it, right? And if you put all these things that have happened that we just kind of took on without questioning, and you added that to the dynamic of your family, right? And your spouse or your significant other or whatever just came to you and said, "Hey, by the way, when we have guests over now, all of our guests are going to have to wear masks and gloves, and they need to wear the little booties on their shoes. Otherwise, they can't come inside." Now, I'm not talking about the households that potentially have somebody who, being sick or whatever, they are deathly sick, and a slight infection could really put them in harm's way. I'm not talking about those situations. I'm just talking about in general. Would you not ask a question why? Would you not look at them and say, "Why are we doing this? What is the purpose behind this?" Like, I understand taking your shoes off when you go in people's houses because they just don't want to track the dirt from the outside in, and that's understandable. If that's your rule, that's your rule. I don't ask people to do that in my house. I want people to be comfortable. I want them to be able to be relaxed. I want them to do what they feel is comfortable for them. I'm just hosting the space to be able to do it. Why do we just comply to this other stuff? Why why are we not asking more questions? I dare to say that maybe we don't ask enough questions because we don't want a confrontation. Like, we don't want to have a back and forth. We just want to have really what should just be a conversation, but there always seems to be confrontation with conversation now when it comes to the opposing views. So maybe that's why some people don't want to ask a question. Questions are good. Questions lead to growth. Questions lead to understanding. All things that I think everybody wants. Like, they don't mind following rules and regulations. Just give us the why. Why are we doing this? Raising my little guy, and as I'm talking about this, makes me wonder, of all the things that I've we as a society have had to endure over the last, 10, 12 years. All of the COVID years and the back and forth on different health things. It makes me wonder what he's gonna have to deal with when he gets to be my age or gets to be an adult, and he's gonna have to face some probably similar stuff, but hopefully his generation learns how to question it and just doesn't fall in line. I hate saying that people are sheep because that, I think, makes it look and feel like it's coming from one side of a conversation because it was so politically driven for a long time that if you're a follower, you're a sheep. I don't want it to be that, but I think it's fair to say that we all have followed guidelines and whatever else without questioning as to why we're doing it. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of places that will be upset by you asking why. Just do as you say, like the old generations used to say, do as I say, not as I do. Just do what you're told to do. If you don't understand the reasons why you're doing what you're doing, then it adds to confusion and misunderstanding and all of those other things. And I think it's important that you think about it that way because questioning is not a bad thing. It's not. It's not a dirty word. It's not any of those things. Questioning always leads to answers. Should lead to answers. And if it doesn't lead to answers, it leads to um, a harsh line drawn and repercussions for the person asking the questions, then that tells you everything you need to know. If you can't ask questions and somebody puts pressure on you and makes it is aggressively telling you to back away from it when you're asking questions, then there's probably something missing. Like there's something being hidden. There's something that they don't want you to know. And it's not all probably not because it's a good thing that they're hiding. They're definitely hiding something that you probably would be upset by. It goes the same thing in a relationship, like we talked about that communication, honesty, trust, all of those things. We need to have that in the decisions that are being made for us as a people. If we're being told to do something, there needs to be some logical understanding and reasoning behind it so that we can translate that information into something that when we tell our kids, when we talk about it with our peers and our friends and our family members, everybody understands it from the same point of view. Everybody understands that if we're being told to do this, there's a logical reason for why we're doing this. Unfortunately, I don't think that that has always been the case through some of the last things that we've had to endure. No consistency whatsoever in the COVID years. Some countries locked down, some countries had curfews, some towns did, some cities did, other places didn't. You had to wear a mask, you didn't have to wear a mask, you had to be vaccinated. You didn't have to be vaccinated if you didn't comply with the curfews. In some countries you got arrested and jailed. I don't know. I don't know. And the sad thing is that I think some of those restrictions and kids not being in school and all of that stuff during the COVID years, I think that had a profound effect on those kids. They lost some of the social edge that they had. I think they lost some of the learning and acceleration in their learning because they were forced to do it from home. I don't think they got the same kind of an education that they would have gotten if they were in a classroom. And I feel bad for them for it because it wasn't their fault. They lost all of the social structure and being able to have a conversation face to face. Again, we didn't have any real understanding as to why we were doing what we were doing. We were told that we had to wear a mask and we had to keep our distance because these germs spread easily. Out of the same conversation, you could hear that like an N95 mask didn't have a filter small enough to stop the particles, but you had to wear a mask or you could just wear like a neck shroud or whatever over your face. Like, I don't know. It was really weird and inconsistent at best with what needed to be done. Like looking back at it and all the ridiculousness of things that people did to be able to cover their mouths during COVID. And the mask was supposed to be the best version of that, but we were allowed to go places with just shirt over your face. Like that doesn't filter germs. Or like a neck gaiter that everybody was buying because they could pull it up over their nose and whatever else. Like it doesn't filter anything. It's just wild when you look back at it, the stuff that we endured and the reasons why we were told to have to do it. And then you look at the process at which we did it and the reasoning behind it, they don't align. It's so, like I said, it's literally fucking bizarro world. Hopefully, at some point, we can get to a point where that shit doesn't happen anymore. I think in this country, if we tried to go through another COVID restriction, I think there would be a lot of resistance. I think that people would rebel against it, and I think they would do it not from the standpoint of worrying about transmitting whatever it is. I think people were severely upset and damaged that they couldn't see their loved ones. If they had a loved one in the hospital, they couldn't go and see them. Um, and some of those people passed away, and family members didn't get to go in and say goodbye to them. And that part is really, really sad. And I think from that standpoint, I don't think people would put up with another lockdown, another COVID restriction, type thing. I don't. So that's my little rant for this week. I think we deserve to have some forthright information on things going forward, whatever it is. And I think that we need to have some truth and honesty and all of that stuff. Um, Please, I hope you guys jump in and check out the Instagram page. Give it a like, give it a follow, check out some of the videos and stuff on there. There's definitely some videos on there from the current podcast and some stuff that I do, outside of my recording of the podcast. So jump in there, check it out, see a little bit about life, a little bit about, I don't know, what my day looks like. Again, that's Baines Brewing, Root for Life podcast, and the Dad Son community on Instagram, and then Root for Life podcast on TikTok and YouTube. So please jump in, check it out, like, follow, share, do all the things, and we'll talk to you guys next week.